While Super Mario Bros. Would be the game to really make platforming into a new genre and inspire almost every title to come, it sadly was beaten to the punch. A month before it was released, Capcom unveiled Makimura to the world, translating to Demon World Village, but of course would be known under its translated title, Ghosts and Goblins. While Mario's influence would make way for such characters as Sonic and Bonk, Ghosts and Goblins platforming would be the defining entry for the action platformer. Games such as Castlevania and Ninja Gaiden would almost be nothing without it, in more ways than one. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It was the brainchild of one Tokuro Fujiwara, a director and producer for many games for Capcom in their early era, like Commando and Bionic Commando, and eventually to probably another influential title later in the 90s, Resident Evil. After that, though, he left to work on a few of his own created companies, where he made the Tomba series and Extermination for PlayStation 2 before crawling right back into Capcom. The last thing he had any involvement with was being a designer for Mad World in 2009. Ghosts and Goblins was probably the most groundbreaking and impressive game Capcom has released so far in their career, which meant it was an easy contender for a Famicom port, especially when Mario was making platformers the talk of the town. But if you've seen this review series, you know what's coming. In case you didn't know, Capcom was not actually porting their arcade games to the Famicom at this time, getting contract developers to do all the hard work. And for the third time in a row, they've hired our old friends, Micronics. If you need a refresher or you're new here to this series, let me tell you who Micronics were. Micronics were a contract developer usually doing ports for several companies. Most notable about their games was that they were terrible, full of bugs, sprite flicker, bad control, and ungodly music, and I should know, I suffered through plenty of their product. According to an anonymous post at 2chan, the president of Micronics may in fact have been a college student who never even playtested the games they've made. It's hard to believe they managed to stay afloat for this long and not have the publisher question their design. But time is money, I guess, and Micronics were cheap. Micronics has indeed worked on some of the worst titles I covered in this series. From their lackluster ports like Elevator Action in 1942 to their even worse original titles like Gaimos and On Yankyo Town, Micronics kept the Famicom library unsanitized. But what about Ghosts and Goblins? Now, unlike those titles, this may be a surprise. NES Ghosts and Goblins is considered a classic of the software. Of course, Micronics kept their name out of the title like most of their games and let Capcom take all the credit. So just seeing Capcom's name alone let this game stay afloat. I can definitely say that this is the best Micronics game I've played so far, but does that make it a good game? Well, let's start at the beginning. We begin this game with a blowjob. I mean, look at that. The guy's in his underwear, the girl's fully clothed, it's a fucking blowjob. Okay, they do look kinda chill, like nothing sexual is going on. You know, excluding the guy being near nude, but in the arcade version, she's much closer and eyeing his crotch. She's about to give him a blowjob, plain and simple. Sex in a Nintendo game, I can't believe it. But before oral can happen, the Princess Prin is kidnapped by Satan, cucked by the Lord of Darkness himself. So the Knight Arthur suits up so he can cure his blue balls. Also, everything starts going apeshit immediately, so I guess he has to deal with that too. Zombies coming out of the ground, devils everywhere, a giant beast called a unicorn is stomping around, but that's not the messed up part. The messed up part is these two were about to get it on in a graveyard. What kind of sick fetish is that? I get that royalty shouldn't be unflowered and all that, so no doing it in the castle. But don't you have a house, Arthur? Unless you're okay doing it on the top of the graves of the deceased. Maybe that's why the zombies are attacking you. Ever think about that? Ghosts and Goblins is a pretty simple game to understand. Get from point A to point B, fire your weapon at enemies, don't get killed, beat the boss, and it's off to the next level. You can actually get new weapons along the way, but sadly this isn't something like Castlevania or even the Kirby series. There's only one weapon that matters, the knife. Every video talking about Ghosts and Goblins will tell you, straight up, get the knife, and they aren't kidding. The knife is endless, moves fast, and goes straight. Sure, not every weapon is useless, but some enemies and bosses are immune to certain weapons, except the knife. Get the knife. So before I get into what I'm sure everyone's waiting for me to talk about, how did Micronics do on this port? I did say it was their best game so far, after all. Well, it's passable most of the time and hideous some of the time. The most notable flaw is the sprite flicker. but I've come to expect it in a Micronics game. It's just par for the course. But I was honestly surprised by the lack of slowdown. Sure, it's choppy when you're keeping the screen moving, but it's nice to know they're getting better one step at a time. But I can't really say the controls are all that great. They're fine except for one big flaw. If you're revving up to jump to another platform but you get too close to the edge, you'll fall straight down, like it's Donkey Kong or something. And that's really annoying. And then there's the programming. I mentioned the chugging, but fall into a pit and you'll notice Arthur sort of just stands there. He doesn't go off screen at all. Plus the death fanfare doesn't even complete. Sure, that's just a nitpick, but you know, it's still not very good programming. My favorite part has to be right here. Just walking along and oh, hello platforms out of nowhere. And finally, there's one little thing. One tiny thing that may be indistinguishable if you don't notice. This game actually takes some time to load. Sure, I wouldn't say it's PlayStation bad, but after dying a bit in this game, you'll sure notice it. What makes it worse is this in-between shot of the map layout. Sure, it's cool to see what levels you have to face up ahead, but couldn't this thing just be saved for the beginning of the level? Let's compare the time it takes to load into your next life compared with another game. See what I mean? Notice how I mentioned dying a bit in this game? Well, I guess it's time to talk about you-know-what. That's right, if you're unaware, Ghosts and Goblins is pretty damn difficult. And I don't mean difficult for the sake of extending the game's playtime, I mean bring your A-game difficult. This is not a game for a fun playthrough romp. This is a game for the sole purpose of conquering its challenge. It is literally hell on an NES cartridge. I'm not fucking joking. It's purposely designed to piss you off. One thing this game likes to throw at you are continuously spawning enemies. The first enemy in the game is a perfect example, whether it be these zombies that pop up at pure random, the birds that get in your way, the ghosts that fly all over the screen, the annoying ass white devils, and especially the bats, but we'll get to those in a minute. And keep in mind, you can only take 2 hits per life. 2 hits! And there's no replacement armor throughout most of this game, meaning it's 2 hits for each life, baby. You might see a knight that an enemy dropped and think it's a replacement armor, but it's not. It's just collectible stone statues that give you points. Yup, precious, precious points. And remember how I said the knife is the only weapon that matters? Well, Capcom knows that too, because in some levels they purposely spawn worthless weapons like the fireball and axe to get in your way. Like here in level 2 if you climb up a certain ladder. And if you want the knife again, you gotta grind on enemies that drop items. If you're lucky. But you know, constantly respawning enemies, only one weapon that matters, 2 hits, beating the game is plausible if you put your mind to it. Capcom has you covered on that because they have one more spiked road bump up ahead, as early as the first level. Reach the halfway point and that's when you lay your eye on the most evil, cruel, diabolical creation of any video game ever. The Red Devils. Goddamn motherfucking sons of bitchin' fuck, I hate these motherfuckers! No other enemy in any other video game is worse than these cocksuckers from hell. Looking back on some of the other games I reviewed, any other enemy that gave me shit is just chicken feed now that I really got the Red Devil experience. They move fast, stay high in the air, making them impossible to hit, and when you do get a chance to hit them, they're usually 0.3 milliseconds ready to smack face first into you. Fuck! If there's at least one positive to this madness, there are checkpoints in the levels, even after a game over. If there were no or barely any continues, this game would be impossible, and would receive an absolutely do not recommend rating from me. Even though I said this game is hell on the NES, if I'm being honest here, levels 1, 2, 4, and 5 are solidly made levels. I'm not trying to say these levels are easy, they're still pretty hard and can get tedious having to replay them, especially in level 2's case where they throw white devils and crows at you while you're trying to defend yourself from these scumbags, but nothing about them made me want to stop playing. And level 5 gets a shout out for being the only level to purposely spawn a replacement armor if you lost it. Awesome. But notice how I left out levels 3 and 6, and well, these 2 levels are the reason Ghosts and Goblins is so notorious. Level 3 begins by dropping a crowd of bats on you, making it almost impossible to dodge. That's right, just starting the level makes you lose one of your hits. That's not a fair challenge, Capcom. But you know what? This bat bullshit is only a pinch to what you have to deal with next. After you reach the blue cave checkpoint, guess what awaits you? Red Devils! Oh, but not just one, or two, but a fucking gauntlet. It takes so much energy and willpower to defeat one, so why not 7 at once? Die and it's back to the beginning of the checkpoint where you'll face off against Red Devil number 1. But then we reach level 6, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this is easily the worst level of any game I've ever played. This level can be considered an act of self-deprecation, it's so bad. Oh yeah, and it starts with a boss rush of sorts. I guess I forgot to talk about the bosses of the game, so I'll go over them quickly. The unicorn can be a bit of a challenge on your first time, but my strategy is just ducking and firing and it'll go down in no time. The dragon is probably the worst. Its pattern is random, so you may be lucky in not taking a hit or getting taken down in no time. And Satan from the beginning of the game is like a red devil, only slower and larger, meaning it's a lot more tolerable, but it's still quite challenging. Okay, with that out of the way, you'll start with the small boss rush against the unicorn and the dragon, which of course you'll probably die to a few times, but don't be fooled into thinking the challenge is over. Because even worse afterwards is a tower full of red devils and scumbags all awaiting your arrival, as well as many shit weapons automatically spawning getting in your way. For this part you'll have to wait for the scumbags to move out of the way from the ladder they're guarding, or else they'll drop a spike ball on you and never move. Then after that, you'll have to deal with both a scumbag and a red devil at the same time. Sheesh, I had a hard enough time dealing with that damn dragon, now I gotta time this shit right? But I learned you can just go down to the previous level to deal with the devil, then climb right back up to deal with the scumbag. Oh wait, I can't because this game magically spawns a red devil out of fucking nowhere. Jesus, Buddha, Shiva, Moses, Tom Cruise! This level is just a baseball bat to the face. Then you think the pain's over, but it's just another baseball bat to the face. But then you think, ah, come on, they can't swing that baseball bat into your face again, and guess what? They swing the baseball bat in your face again. Playing this level made me question if this game as a whole deserves the reputation it gotten. Despite the brutal difficulty, many NES fans consider Ghosts and Goblins good. Can I agree? Even after saying I don't mind most of the levels in this game? Well, no. Sure, I can enjoy the simplistic nature, but level 3 and 6 can make what enjoyability there is come to a screeching halt. Also, the Micronics production doesn't help. And all these games with Nintendo hard difficulties have to have something appealing to make it playable. Murasame had the fun gameplay, Mario Lost Levels was a Mario game, but Ghosts and Goblins? Sorry, I just can't see the silver lining. Other than Micronics programming a continue option, which is sadly the only good thing Micronics is good at. But let's just get this over with. Oh, but did you forget the shield weapon? That's right, see this shield in level 6? If you didn't beat the level with it, you go back all the way to level 5. What the hell? See what I mean? They know the knife is the only weapon you were going to use, so they pulled the shield out of nowhere to put you on your toes. Give me a fucking break. Is that the last prank, Capcom? Fine, beat the boss, then it's on to the final battle against the true villain, Astaroth. He's probably the easiest thing about this game. This room is an illusion and a trap devised by Satan. Go ahead dauntlessly, make rapid progress. Yep, that's the big twist of this game. You have to beat it twice to get the true ending. Nope, I don't think so. Done. I beat it. Who cares about that princess? I can stroke myself. Goodbye. See ya.